Good morning, St. Louis, and welcome into Cards Hub 365. I'm your host, Ethan Hannaford, joined this morning by my good friend, Stefan Caray, and we have plenty to discuss regarding the St. Louis Cardinals, who will look to earn their second series sweep of the 2025 season and would be their first one since the opening series of the year against the Minnesota Twins. Once again, I'm Ethan Hannaford. My friend Stefan Caray joining us. Stefan, how you doing on this lovely Sunday morning?
I'm doing great. It's been a lot of fun the last 2 days. So these shows are a whole lot more fun when we have wins to cover and to talk about, and Cardinals have some momentum. So I can't wait to get into it today with you, Ethan.
We want to hear your guys' thoughts in the chats. Good morning, Andy. Good morning, Jeff. We appreciate you guys joining us. We want to hear those thoughts as to what you've taken away from these last couple of games in St. Louis. We're going to definitely discuss yesterday's ball game, but as well, the Cardinals getting ready to pack up following today's game and head to Cincinnati for a 4-game series against the Reds. The splits between home and away have just been unbelievable to start the year. I mean, something that almost only you can explain, right, with the baseball gods do what the baseball gods want at times, but we're going to discuss that as well. And then the Cardinals dropped their lineup for today's matinee premiere against the Brew Crew, game number 3 of the series. But let's go ahead and start with yesterday's ball game, Stefan. A 6-5 winner for the Cardinals. They had the lead throughout most of this ball game yesterday, really until we got to the top of the 9th inning when Ryan Helsley did something that Ryan Helsley doesn't do very often. He blew a save opportunity, giving up the 2-run bomb to Jackson Chourio. Now, I know there's a lot of other things to take from the yesterday's ball game outside of, what Ryan Helsley did in his inning of work in the 9th inning. But the Cardinals, after giving that up, that's been the issue. That's been the issue, right, during this season, is the bullpen and giving up leads when they have them. But the Cardinals, surprisingly, right, in a sense, because they haven't been able to do this nearly as much this season, are able to respond. And Nolan Arenado sends the fans home happy when he sends one into a similar spot down the left field line. And now we're in a situation where we're talking about a potential series sweep.
Yeah, I mean, he's as clutch as they come, right? Nolan Arenado seems to be that guy in that moment more often than not in a St. Louis Cardinals uniform. And, Andy says the walk-off by Arenado fueled the fire. I think they're going to go on a good run now. Look at the schedule ahead. I think this is certainly a good take, right? You get a chance to sweep the Brewers, who are on a 4-game losing streak. You have a chance to sweep a division rival ahead of going up against a team that, is in the mix for that NL Central division in the Reds. You go to a very hitter-friendly ballpark with some starting pitching that is pitched well regardless of the atmosphere. So they just need to purge their demons on the road, and I think they'll have success against Cincinnati. But I want to begin with yesterday talking about the early stages of the game. I threw a tweet out there on my Twitter. You can see it below my name about how impressed I was with the second and third innings of offense from the Cardinals. They were hitting for extra bases. They were manufacturing runs. They were hitting sacrifice flies, and they were contributing top to bottom in the order. They were playing Cardinals baseball. They weren't trying to hit the long ball. They weren't striking out a ton. They weren't swinging out of their shoes and on their heels up against the starter yesterday in Quinn Priester. They were being patient and very, very disciplined. And that's the way that this team is going to have to operate. I talked about it with Joe Roderick a lot. We've said that 5 or 6 runs is the magic number of runs for the Cardinals to score if they want to not just be competitive in games, but to win them. And of course, last night, or yesterday, I should say, it was a 6-5 win. So back-to-back 1-run victories. They're showing a little bit of tenacity, a little bit of excitement that they can win those close games after really not being able to the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you said it. The Cardinals have, right, it feels like for a decent chunk of the season, had the right approach at the plate, right? It's really just been a result of if at times they're going to be able to finish it with runners in scoring position, which has been a challenge at times this year. It's always refreshing when you see St. Louis being able to finish off those innings, right? Because you'll see them start so positively so often. It's a matter of, can you finish them? Can you put runs on the board? St. Louis was able to yesterday.
Yeah, they certainly were. And it was just, again, a team effort. Top to bottom, things were great. And I mentioned in one of the earlier shows that I wanted to see more from the Cardinals scoring in the middle stages of the game, not just innings 1 and 2, but innings 3, 4, 5, 6. They didn't score in 5 and 6, but they did score in 3 and 4, and they scored 5 runs before being answered in the 5th and 6th. The Brewers started to creep their way back. Now, everybody's going to focus on Ryan Helsley. 2 blown saves. That's 50% the amount that he had for the entirety of last year. Fans reaching out to me saying, hey, are you concerned? Are you nervous? Well, it's Ryan Helsley. He had 49 saves last year. He's been one of the best closers in baseball since he started with the Cardinals. And no, I'm not that concerned. I think the bullpen as a whole has had their fair share of struggles. But as you start to see the season continue, they'll get into a groove. Helsley's issue, I think, right now is when he's not super confident. When he starts leaning on that slider, you know that he's not comfortable throwing the fastball. Yeah. That fastball is as good as any in Major League Baseball. When you have triple digits in your back pocket, you're going to want to use it more often than not. But if you feel like you can't use it, you're throwing a 90-mile-an-hour slider that is very, very good. But if you leave it up in the zone like you did to Jackson Chourio, it's going to get hit. So I think Ryan Helsley certainly knows what he needs to do to be successful. It's 2 blown saves. Fortunately for him, it resulted in a Cardinals win, unlike the last one in Boston. But I think that's going to be a few and far between situation for him. It's just about getting the bullpen confident and comfortable, like Ollie Marmol has said over and over again.
Yesterday, Sonny Gray, a solid outing, 6 innings, 7 hits, 3 earned runs. He walked 3, struck out 4. Talked about how it wasn't a complete outing, but he had, a solid overall. I think he said okay is how he defined it, but he talked about how he feels like he's getting closer and closer to really putting together consistent, complete outings, which is something he doesn't feel like he's done a very good job of this year. I tell you what, it is so funny to look at how St. Louis fans were perceiving Sonny Gray at the beginning of the year with the velocity concerns compared to where they are now, back to being, just about as close to a true number 1 within a rotation. I think that Sonny Gray has done a really good job in large part for when this team has struggled, when this team has been in their woes. He has been just about as consistent as they come from what you're going to get out of him this year, Stefan.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the consistency of the rotation, 1 through 5, even 1 through 6, if you include Steven Matz, is helping that case, right? Sonny Gray is standing out in a group of really talented starting pitching. It's now getting the bullpen locked in. And the pressure feels like it's on the starters to get deeper into the games, into the 7th, 8th, and potentially 9th. I doubt that's going to be happening very often because of today's day and age in baseball. But the deeper your starters get, the better chance the Cardinals have to win right now with the way that the bullpen has been struggling. So I think that's what Sonny Gray is maybe alluding to. He wants to have that 7, 8 inning start, which we have known him to do. But quality starts have been the norm for the Cardinals this year. I'm not sure the exact figure, but I feel like at least 40% of their starts have been quality. Eric Fetty's on a 3-game quality start streak, and the Cardinals have won none of those games. So, their starting pitchers are doing their job. Think about Liberatore. Palante, he's had his struggles the last 2 starts, but not really anything that you can blame him fully on. He's given up 4 runs in 5 or 6 innings. That's fine. That's still a competitive start. So it's certainly a big change from the beginning of the year when they were struggling a little bit. And remember, just 2 seasons ago, even a little bit last season, the Cardinals were desperate for quality starts. They weren't getting them. So now they're getting them all the time. It's a matter of the offense putting it together, the bullpen relieving the starting pitching, and finding a way to get it going. But Sonny Gray has looked like a true number 1. He's pitched incredibly well. And I think that has sort of radiated its way through the starting rotation, is that everybody's putting their best foot forward, or their best pitch forward in this case.
The Cardinals are either up to 8 or 9 blown saves now on the season, or outings where the bullpen has entered the game with a lead and has given that up. That is not a recipe for success. The bullpen, outside of Helsley yesterday, a couple of guys, specifically Riley O'Brien, had came in, got a big out yesterday. Steven Matz held his own. Those two putting together a scoreless inning, and then Phil Maton working back-to-back days, something we haven't seen from him very much. 18 pitches yesterday, 26 the day before. I'm assuming that he is not going to be available today. So the Cardinals are going to have to get it done with different guys today. That's something we talked about potentially seeing yesterday. We see them go to Maton. Hopefully Riley O'Brien can be a consistent part of this bullpen. We saw some encouraging things from him at times in spring training last year. So it'll be interesting to keep an eye on him. But what I want to talk about is Steven Matz, right? We talked about this daunting schedule the Cardinals have coming up as far as the length of time until they have their next off day. I believe you said May 8th. Is that correct?
Yep, May 8th. So, I mean, that's not this Thursday, but next Thursday. They're in the thick of it, right? They have, of course, today they play Cincinnati for 4. Then New York comes to town. Then I believe Pittsburgh comes to town. Then they're on the road again. But it is certainly a gauntlet. This is a team that, just went on the road for 7 games, had, a quick off day, and then right back to it. So they're going to be embattled, and they're going to need as many starting pitchers as they can get. This is where you start to take a look and wonder, okay, do we send somebody down to AAA just to get a spot start? Is there a portion of time here, if you're the Cardinals, where you're thinking about how flexible you can be with your starting pitchers? Because one of these games, you have to think Michael McGreevy looks like an awfully attractive option. Now, today, I wouldn't be shocked if we see Steven Matz because of how many relievers they had to use yesterday. They had to use O'Brien, Maton, Helsley, and Matz. But Matz didn't throw a ton of pitches. I mean, Steven Matz threw 13 pitches, 8 for strikes in 2/3 of an inning of work. I wouldn't be shocked if we see him eating up a couple of innings if need be, with Eric Fedde out there on the mound and maybe turning it over to Helsley. I'm not entirely sure what they do to navigate that, but they're going to have to go with some guys that maybe haven't gotten consistent reps out there on the mound. And I'm talking about guys like Matt Swanson, who would be making his second major league appearance. The Cardinals are going to try to sweep this series, though, because that puts you in a completely different position than if you just take 2 out of 3.
Absolutely. And it also gives you a chance kind of once we're nearing the end of April to look at it and really start to evaluate what this start to the season has been. If the Cardinals are able to put together a little bit of a win streak, right? Certainly in the eyes of fans, I think that they start to look away from some of the issues that we have seen. If the bullpen is able to piece it together a little bit more, there's no doubt that this team has potential to be a lot better than they have been here in the early going. Yesterday, Katie Wu, prior to yesterday's game, tweeted out that Steven Matz was available for work in the bullpen yesterday. And the rest of the series in early next week is still TBD. Could still take a spot start versus Cincinnati. So as of yesterday afternoon, the certainty of what Steven Matz's role was going to be was still up in question. You just mentioned it a second ago. There could be a scenario, right, where it makes sense for them to bring up Michael McGreevy during the stretch. But I think it's really going to depend, Stefan, on how desperate Oliver Marmol and John Mozeliak feel that they are with this left-handed bullpen situation. Jojo Romero has been really bad to start off the year. John King has been really bad to start off the year. So if these guys, you throw them out there perhaps for a time or two early today or early in the Cincinnati series, and the struggles continue, I don't know how much longer those two guys being Marmol and Mozeliak, are going to be able to continue to go back to them when it feels like you have an answer right now in Steven Matz. But because of the weird spot that he is in, going back and forth between being that sixth man in the rotation, the long relief guy, and then we've seen him also be the one-inning guy like he was yesterday at times. Being stuck between all three of those, right, it really limits in how you can trust to just really consistently go to him as that bullpen guy, because you have to be able to rest him when he is used in the rotation or at a long relief. I'm going to be curious to see how long the leash is with those two lefty relievers, John King and Jojo Romero, because there's no way that the Cardinals can continue to go to them if they continue to pitch like they have here in the early going.
Yeah, no, I think it's certainly a difficult thing to approach if you're Ollie Marmol, because you can't afford to use Steven Matz every other day for 3 innings. You can't. However, what Steven Matz has been so good at doing is eating up those innings, but also keeping them scoreless. I mean, his 1.80 ERA is the best ERA on the team right now. So, I mean, I think he has been a godsend for the Cardinals. His health has been good, which is really, really the most important thing. He'd struggled with injury over the last few years, but he is proving his value to this team in a number of different roles. I think that today I'll be curious to see how Marmol handles this, whether it is Romero, whether it's King, whether it's Matz again after throwing just 13 pitches yesterday, and who's in to close out the game. They've got to find a way to get that depth in their bullpen. And it begins with Eric Fetty, who I think can have a huge day today. I mentioned 3 consecutive quality starts, 4 quality starts this season. He has been as consistent as the Cardinals could have ever wanted him to be. Now it's just a matter of getting him some run support and getting him a win. I mean, if anybody deserves a win right now, it's Eric Fetty, because he's pitched like a winning pitcher this year. So the ERA speaks for itself. The record doesn't necessarily speak for itself to how well he has pitched this year. If he can get deep into this game and maybe save this bullpen ahead of, again, a long week and a half, 2 weeks of baseball before getting your next off day, they'll be primed for a really good run here. 3 wins in a row would be great. Maybe it turns into 4. Maybe it turns into 5. You start to get back to 500, you feel a lot more comfortable about what this team can do. I think there's no doubt in my mind about that. But you go to a ballpark in Cincinnati where relievers struggle, starters struggle, pitchers in general struggle. You have to keep that bullpen fresh and ready to go.
He is Stefan Caray. I am Ethan Hannaford. This is Cards Hub 365, and we are going to discuss today's lineup for your St. Louis Cardinals, as well as the pitching matchup in just a second. But before that, I am here to remind you that Cards Hub 365 is powered by Gray Bar here on Sports Hub STL, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
This is Cards Hub 365. I am Ethan Hannaford. He is Stefan Caray, and this is Sports Hub STL. We appreciate all of you continuing to stay involved in the chat today. We want to hear those thoughts on today's lineup as we discuss it. You mentioned Eric Fetty going out and being the starter today for your St. Louis Cardinals, 1-2 with a 3.33 ERA to start off the year, and he will be facing off against former Cardinal Jose Quintana, who is off to a stellar start in Milwaukee, 3-0 with a .96 ERA. And this is the lineup that your St. Louis Cardinals will throw at him. Lars Nootbaar will lead off, and he will be in center field today, something we need to discuss also, Stefan. First time I believe we're seeing that this year. Wilson Contreras is batting in the 2 spot. He is at first base. He'll be followed by Brendan Donovan, who is in left. Nolan Arenado, following the walk-off home run yesterday, is back in the cleanup spot. And we see Luken Baker, someone we haven't seen start here in several games. He'll be DHing in the 5 spot today. He'll be followed by Thomas Ajayci, who is batting 6th and playing second base. 7, 8, 9 today looks like Jordan Walker in right, Pedro Pajes behind the plate, and Mason Wynn at short. So a couple of things here that we see, Stefan. First off, Jordan Walker back in the lineup. Let's hope that he can right the ship. It's been a rough stretch for Jordan, who we know has a lot of potential, but it seems like he started to fall back into some old habits last year. Big struggle for him, laying off of the breaking pitches that were tailing outside. We saw him really disciplined in the early going of the season, but it seemed like as April went on, started to go back to some of those old habits. I know that they have been scheduling in specifically some off days for him to be able to get some work in, to work on some of those small things, right? Some of those mechanics. Let's hope that from the off day, from the couple that he's had of recent, that he's able to put those into effect and be a little bit more disciplined today at the plate.
Right, and if Walker gets going, there aren't a lot of places to hide in this lineup. Yes, You don't have a ton of home run hitters as it currently stands, but you have Nootbaar hitting well. You have Contreras really turning a corner. He's been tearing the cover off the baseball over the last week or so. If Walker can start to drive the baseball and drive them for extra bases, not just singles, you're going to see this lineup become really, really scary, really, really fast. Yes, some old habits are dying hard for Jordan Walker, but I think you need to give him the chance to have that runway that they've talked about. And the tools are there. It's a mental thing for him right now. And once he overcomes it, watch out. He's going to be a great player. But Jose Quintana is going to be a very difficult task. The Cardinals have struggled against him historically. Quintana in his career against St. Louis has been really, really good. 6-4, 3.95 ERA, 66 strikeouts in 14 appearances versus the Cardinals. And I mean, your big sluggers, the marquee guys that have seen him the most, Arenado has 21 at bats, just 2 hits, and a 95 average. Contreras just 1 hit in 15 ABs, a .067 average against Quintana. So hopefully they can turn things around against him this afternoon. But he's been good this year, virtually every start he's pitched. This will be his 4th start, a late sign by the Brewers, a really good sign by the Brewers that has been that veteran presence in their rotation that they need. But you're going to see these young guys getting scheduled off days, like Victor Scott today. I mean, you look at what he needs. Sometimes you just need a day to not patrol the outfield. And looking at what Victor Scott has been able to do in his consistent at-bats has been something really, really good for the Cardinals, something that they've desperately needed. Now, I'm not entirely sure how the experiment is going to go with Nootbaar in center. Is he capable of playing that spot? Absolutely. But you're putting him in there with his bat. You don't have a ton of left-handers in this lineup, just 2 of them. So you're really going matchup heavy against Jose Quintana. You hope that Nootbaar can contribute. He's been a good hitter against lefties in his career. Donovan has hit everyone, no matter who it is on the mound. But yeah, I mean, I'll be curious to see how this plays out for the Cardinals with this lineup, because Ollie Marmol is just saying, look, we're putting the righties out there and we're going to take our chances and try and sweep this series.
All I'm going to say about Jose Quintana is I liked him a lot more when he was wearing the birds on the bat on his chest rather than the opponents, because as you mentioned, has been a consistent pitcher in this league now for a long time. Solid numbers against the Cardinals and solid numbers against the heart of the order, which I think is a really good point to consider when you look at what has been one of the bigger issues for the Cardinals when they're on the road is lack of production from the heart of the order. So we're going to talk about that here in just a second, but I want to harp just for another moment on Lars Nootbaar in center field, because I'm not going to lie, when I first saw this morning, I was both surprised and excited because I knew it gave us something to talk about, right? Is that this is the first time we're seeing Lars Nootbaar in center field, I believe, here in the 2025 campaign. We saw him there a little bit at the early parts of the 2024 season, but Ollie Marmol has been pretty clear throughout his time, I guess in the last 2 years, when asked about it, that they feel much more comfortable with Nootbaar in right field. But because I think, right, of the lack of offense that they had during this recent stretch, and because of the recent move with Thomas Saggese staying up when Mason Wynn returned to the active roster, Michael Ciani goes down, and Ollie Marmol perhaps sacrificing a little bit of that defense for offense. This is a scenario where we would have seen Ciani make a rare start, but now we're seeing Lars Nootbaar, who, as you mentioned, has been able to hit both lefties and righties consistently throughout his career. But we're also seeing, right, that Victor Scott looks like he's going to be the guy day in and day out in center field. They have to, I would assume, feel that they are going to use Nootbaar or not have Victor Scott in center field so little, right, that they don't feel as though it is going to be a big enough deficit to where they need to keep Michael Ciani for an entire roster spot when he was starting so rarely, being used primarily in an 8th and 9th inning spot. So I know you had just mentioned a couple of thoughts on it, but I think that this makes sense in the situation, especially when you take into consideration more so how they were hitting on the road, but how desperate they were for offense.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And again, you talk about the defense for the Cardinals. We've credited the starting pitching for how good they've been, but a lot of the credit also goes to the defense. They catch everything. They have been as good defensively as any team in baseball. Walker has been great in right. Scott has been tremendous in center. You've had great defense up the middle from Wynn, Saggese, Donovan, Gorman. Of course, Arenado is just perennially one of the best defenders in the league. So give credit where it's due. They have that flexibility and the trust in their players to be able to make the plays regardless of what position you put them in. I mean, look at Thomas DeJace's play yesterday that saved a run. I mean, he
Unbelievable.
That could have been the biggest play of the game in a one-run game. So you have that trust as a pitcher for the defense behind you. Yes, is Nootbaar a natural center fielder? No, but his bat plays. And that's going to be very, very important for the Cardinals. Is he as good of a defender in center as Michael Ciani? No, but he's going to get the chance to prove it. And right now, you don't have a backup option in two of your most middle of the field positions. You don't have a true backup shortstop. You don't have a true backup center fielder. So you got to make do with what you have. And I think the Cardinals have done a nice job of that. Ollie Marmol has done a nice job of that. Remember when Pedro Pages was playing second base and the Cardinals won the game? They've found ways to win defensively, even when it's been the most, unlikely of circumstances. This is a good move. I hope the bats come to work because, if the balls hit to the gaps, you're going to have a little bit of awkwardness at first. But I think Nootbaar's up to the challenge, and he's as versatile a player as any.
I appreciate you bringing back the Pedro Pages to second base memory. It was such a beautiful moment that we will remember here in St. Louis. St. Louis's sweetheart, Pedro Pages. Before we wrap up here on Cards Up 365, as the Cardinals are getting set here in the next few hours to face off against the Milwaukee Brewers, I want to talk about some of these splits that we have seen for the Cardinals at home and on the road. And I think that I'll be curious to see how long these splits are so polar, right? And the reason we're discussing this is with there is no hiding that it was another abysmal road trip that the Cardinals were coming off of. And it looks like we have seen an entirely different team these last two games facing off against a solid team in the Milwaukee Brewers. Back out on the road, obviously, I don't know if I would say the Reds are at the caliber of the New York Mets or the Atlanta Braves, even despite their struggles early in the season. But I still want to talk about a couple of these. The Cardinals, 10-4 at home, 2-11 on the road. And you look at some of these splits, the offense is quite literally top three in baseball when they're playing at home. They lead the league in average. They're top five in slugging and top three in OPS. On the road, they're average in the league, right? They're right there balancing out to the middle of the pack when you combine all three of those. But the pitching has been the bigger issue, right? Sixth in the league in ERA when pitching at home. They lead the league in WHIP, which means that they're not walking guys a lot. And they're K to walk. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Libby.
Yeah, we appreciate it, Matthew. And then their K to walk ratio, in large part, being helped by him as well, fifth in the league. On the road, a very different story. Their ERA, 6.13 on the road, is last in baseball. Their WHIP is 25th in baseball, and their K to walk ratio, is 28th in baseball. I don't know, Stefan. We're so early in the season. They've had now 2 full homestands and road trips. I don't think we're far enough into the season to where this is just more than freak coincidence. You can't really, I don't think, contribute it to the talent that they're playing on the road because they've played some good teams at home as well that they've beat. But it is pretty fascinating looking at some of these numbers and seeing how polar opposite they are. They truly, up to this point of the season, have been a different team at home than they've been on the road.
Yeah, I think that's totally true, and it's evident based on the numbers. But one thing that is also apparent is when you look at the records, the splits at home across Major League Baseball, the Cardinals are 10-4 at home, which is an amazing record, right? They're 9th in the league in terms of home record. You'd think 10-4 would be in the top 5. They're 9th. They are 9th. So every other team is having success at home as you'd expect. So, and they faced a couple of those teams that are in the top 10. They faced a couple of those teams that are in the top 3. The Mets are 12-1 at home. 12-1.
Unbelievable.
So they ran into that team. They got swept in a 4-game series. Been very good at home. They're in the top 7. They have like 3 losses at home. So, the Cardinals have been good at home. It's about getting good on the road and purging some of those demons, finding a way to be successful. And I think the Great American Ballpark is a good place for them to get back on track. They've had success there in the past. The Reds are a team that has struggled. They're struggling to find identity. And at some point, I hate to say it, you got to get over it. You got to get over the fact that you're on the road because you know what team you are at home. You can't afford to go, let's do the math in our head. You can't afford to go 52 and 30 at home, and then go 30 and 52 on the road, or sorry, 51 and 30 at home, and 30 and 51 on the road. You just can't. So I think this team is a lot better than what they've shown. They have the capabilities, and the chips will fall where they may. But I think next week is going to be very telling.
Very telling indeed. One final split that I want to bring up, because there are a lot of things that are they're really close to clicking for them on the road. How many wins have they been 3 outs away from, 4 or 5 outs away from Busch Stadium, to where all of a sudden we could be looking at a completely different story? So just a couple of other numbers I want to bring up real quick from these splits, right? Jojo Romero, the ERA difference is quite literally 10 runs compared to home and on the road. It's 7.5 runs for Phil Maton, and it's 8 runs for John King. He's only had, and he's only had 2 appearances at home, so that helps. But regardless, right? I mean, the difference is stark for some of these bullpen pieces specifically. There are some differences, right, in some of the starting pitchers, but like we've talked about, in large part, the starting pitching's been good. Some of those crazy numbers that they had, I think, in Boston and in that first road trip of the year probably ballooned some of those numbers, I would assume. For example, Eric Fetty, even Andre Palante, Miles Michaelis for sure. And then the last guy I'll bring up that the stats, the comparisons, right, between home and road are extremely contradicting, right, is Lars Nootbaar, who is batting just under 400 at home and is batting 122 on the road. It goes to show for your offense how important he has been as far as setting the tone at the top of the lineup, right? Using that power to the gaps more so, but being able to get on for more than just his walk ability, which has been consistent throughout the year, but what is not always has been his bat. Been significantly better at Busch Stadium. When he's getting on, guys like Nolan Arenado, Nolan Gorman are sending him in. When he's not, those guys aren't having those opportunities to be able to do so. A lot of interesting splits between the two, but like you said, eventually you just got to start ponying up and getting the job done on the road. I see no better opportunity than in this upcoming series at Great American Ballpark for St. Louis to be able to do so.
Yeah, I mean, if you get to 500, and it's a 4-game series, right? So if you get off to a hot start and you continue to ride this wave, you could very easily find yourself above 500. Now, that might be wishful thinking. That would mean they'd have to be on a 7-game winning streak. But if you end up winning today, and you take 3 out of 4 in Cincinnati, you are at 500, and that's exactly what you want to see, right? You're the Cardinals. You can take a deep breath, and you've pretty much ended and remedied all the mistakes in New York and in Atlanta. Remember, they started that road trip at, what was it, 9-9 or 10-10?
9-9.
9-9. So I think that they have a chance to do something really special. But this team right now, as it currently sits, is not built to win games 10-2.
Yeah.
They're not the Dodgers. They're not the Cubs, unfortunately, right? But because of that, they are built to win games 5-4, and the bullpen has to respond to that. And I think the bullpen understands their job. They understand that they're going to be pitching in a lot of close games. But it would be nice, I'm sure, for them to get some reprieve, to get a 5-0 lead where it doesn't turn into 5-3, doesn't turn into 5-4, where they have to, gut it out and get 9 outs without giving up a run in the 7th, 8th, and 9th. That's what these guys are paid to do. But we haven't really seen a game where the Cardinals have been leading by 6 or 7 and ended the game up by 6 or 7. So I think that they have it in them. But that would go a long way for this bullpen to give them a little bit of built-in rest during the game rather than having to build in rest during off days.
Very well said. Cardinals and Brewers, 1:15 first pitch coming to you from Eric Fetty. He's facing off against Jose Quintana, and Cardinals golf umbrella giveaway down at the ballpark today. So if you're down there, enjoy that. Hopefully the rain holds off this afternoon. Last I saw, Jimmy the Cat posting that the tarp was on the field, but let's hope that we're able to get through that one and then head off to Cincinnati and continue to keep things moving in the right direction. This has been Cards Up 365 on Sports Hub STL. We will all have post-game coverage for both the Cardinals and the Blues, who play a major big-time game for competition today against the Winnipeg Jets as they look to even up that series. So yours truly, Brendan Schaefer as well, and I believe Jacob Stonick will have coverage for that. And then, as mentioned, we will also have Cardinals post game as well, following hopefully what has been a series sweep for your Redbirds against the Brew Crew. He is Stefan Caray. I am Ethan Hannaford. We appreciate you staying tuned in for this morning's Cards Hub 365 on Sports Hub STL.